You already know the news, and so do I. But in case if you don't know, Criterion once again got shifted to work on Battlefield again. I'm just gonna go and cut straight to the chase. Just because Battlefield is a breadwinner, along with your other franchises like your sports titles, doesn't mean you're gonna go ahead and neglect your other franchises by pulling your developers aside from that project, like Need for Speed in this instance, to another one, when Need for Speed needs that attention that you're giving to Battlefield. You know, at this rate, I'm starting to think that eventually EA is gonna just drop Need for Speed and make it how Rockstar did with Midnight Club. Not do another game and forget about it, even if they own the trademark and everything. But seriously, as for someone myself that played Need for Speed games since 2010, I have seen and missed a lot of things that EA used to do back then with their developers, even old Criterion, Black Box, you name it, all those studios. Some of those things that I miss are just basically the variation of games that we used to have. Sure, it involved a lot of studios to get involved and make their own interpretation of their Need for Speed game, but at least there was variation for you to play with, even if it was during a time where Need for Speed was losing its edge as to what it's supposed to be. And speaking of variation, you have Codemasters, or they have their hands too tied up with F1 and WRC, they can't do anything. Other things that I missed, you can also just consider them as things that they should be in Need for Speed games that never should have left, should have been in games ago, and ideas for the next game, if possible, which include things like Autoscope, Challenge Series playlists, and even a better multiplayer mode like how we had in older Need for Speed games, Most Wanted 2012 downwards. And that's saying especially with the two most recent Need for Speed games being lackluster or just pretty mid when it came to multiplayer. Sure, Unbound has its own modes and things that you can do, but it's still not enough. All I ask, and pretty much probably you as well, it's something like Most Wanted 2012's multiplayer, how it was structured basically. Now for some things that I want, and you also may agree with this as well, especially when you have a whole team to develop the game and not like 90% of the team working on something else. Better physics. I know, we've been saying this for years, but the best solution at this point in my opinion, switch game engines. Stop using Frostbite. It doesn't work for racing games. You either A, develop a racing game from scratch with a studio or a software company under your umbrella meant for racing games, B, source another game engine that's good enough and powerful enough to develop a racing game, or C, just use what Codemasters is already using. A better car list, because the car list on Unbound includes some cars that have been here since 2015, and nothing wrong against those cars, but dude, I'd rather have new variations of a Camaro or even a Challenger than just have more convertibles in the game. That's not to say that no new cars have been added between 2015 to Unbound. They have. But it would have been better if cars that people would actually want to drive were added, and even old cars that people used to love in the older Need for Speed games that have never made a return since. Heck, you can go back from any game from the very first Need for Speed to Rivals and tell me which cars that you would love to return that will be a perfect addition for Unbound or for the next game. Some people may want this, others not, and it's understandable, but a better story will be acceptable as well. And yeah, that's saying from a guy that's known for making everything wrong with videos on Need for Speed games, even on games that have a story, but all of those videos are just meant for jokes, and really, I enjoy with a lot of the stories in Need for Speed games. Except for Undercover, Payback, and Unbound. But if a story it's not possible, then go back to basics, how it used to be with the classic era and Hot Pursuit. No story, just challenges and events for you to do. But if you're gonna have the consistency of adding a story for every Need for Speed game here on now, have better writers. We don't want another Unbound story, okay? I could go on more and more as to what should be and what shouldn't be repeated, but this is the basis of what I want in a Need for Speed game. Now again, I'm not gonna say to repeat and rebrand everything that was done in the past and package into one game. Just make a good game. But especially have a full studio to develop it. Because Need for Speed as a franchise is one of the biggest, if not the biggest, racing franchise of all time. One thing that I don't want to see beyond its 30th anniversary is for this franchise to be completely neglected and eventually forgotten. I don't want what Rockstar did to Midnight Club here. But anyways, I'm just here spreading the word with the hashtag WeWantNFS that came from Core Motive. I did my part, and you can also do yours with the hashtag and even make your own video as to what you want to see in Need for Speed, and give it the attention that it needs. So anyways, I'm out of here.